Hi there, I'm Jack Rita with Future Pastimes, one of the designers of the expansion for Dune, Richese, which came out a few months back. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the Richese faction, tell you a little bit about what they do, and some tips on how you can try to leverage their advantages to win a game with House Richese. As designers, we find it pretty entertaining. We've been able to find people expressing their opinion about each and every faction in Dune, about how it's utterly overpowered, and a separate opinion how it's completely underpowered. So we kind of feel like if a faction is both too powerful and not powerful enough, that it's probably just right. But there's definitely people who are struggling with how to really tap into what Richese does in order to win the game with that faction. It's very unconventional in terms of its advantages and how to tap into them in order to win. So let's talk a little bit about what they do. The faction sheet for Richese. Richese is a technology faction similar to the Ixians. They actually compete with the Ixians for contracts and technology and whatnot in the Dune universe. But we learn in the prequel books that the Richese family, having not won several important contracts, and it's run by Count Ilbin, who's not a great businessman. They're in dire financial straits. So we wanted to leverage that for the faction as a jumping off point, and then see what we could do to make that an interesting faction to play. So their two main advantages revolve one around these no-field tokens. So no-fields are a way that you can move around or exist basically invisibly. It hides from prescience, and it's actually kind of like a stealth technology. So they have 3 tokens, and they are numbered 0, 5, and 3. And these no-field tokens are used to ship down to the board and keep the number of your forces that you're shipping secret until you reveal that no-field token. And you can choose to reveal it before the battle phase at any point. But if you are in a battle, it gets revealed with your battle plan, and then you bring in that many forces in there. Their other advantage is that they start the game with 10 Richese Treachery cards. So these are regular Treachery cards, but this is a special set of 10 that they must sell. So every turn they have to sell one of these cards in a special kind of auction, and they have 2 special auctions that they can employ in order to sell them. One of them is a once-around auction, so each faction, starting from either the left or the right of the Richese faction, will have one opportunity to bid, and then the Richese faction will have the last opportunity to bid. So if you really want a card as one of the first bidders, you have to bid high, knowing that it's not going to come back around to you to give you another chance to up your bid. So you get one shot at it. The other form is a silent auction, and that is where everybody puts an amount of spice in their hand, and you reveal all the spice simultaneously, and the high bidder wins, with ties being decided by storm order. And the other thing is that the Richese faction, this card that they're selling is going to replace one of the cards that's normally up for bid, so you're not selling any more cards per game turns than you normally would. But Richese can choose to be the first card that goes up for bid or the last card. And so these all factor into how you leverage Richese to win. So let's start with the no-field tokens. So I'm a huge fan of leveraging the no-field tokens in a variety of ways. First of all, when you ship them, they're treated as one force for most rules. So you're shipping them for the cost of shipping 1 force. So that's 1 spice if you ship into a stronghold, and 2 spice if you go anywhere else. So let's imagine that you've got the 5 token. You can ship straight to a spice blow. And if a spice blow, say, in Sealgo South or Habanya Erg or Red Chasm, these are spice blows that are not the easiest ones to get to for most factions. You can't get to them from Carthag or Arakeen. So if you have ornithopters, and even from the other strongholds, unless you have ornithopters, you can't get to them normally. So here, for the price of 2 spice, you can ship the 5 tokens straight down to those spice blows, and then reveal the token before the battle phase, so that you know that you're going to have the forces there to collect or get into a fight normally. But again, because they're hard to get to, you're less likely to have fights in those territories. And the other thing, of course, is that when you put a no-field token down into any spice blow, nobody knows how many forces you have there. So that can be a deterrent as well. People are like, I don't know, do I want to fight 5 forces? Maybe there's only 3, maybe there's 0. The interesting thing about the 0 token is, again, it's treated as 1 force for most rules until it's revealed. So if you've got the 0 token in a territory with spice by itself, it's going to collect 2 spice. So if you're able to ship into a stronghold, you ship a no-field token into a stronghold. You have ornithopters if it's Carthag or Arakeen, so you could move that 3 territories to a spice blow and then pick up 2 spice. So I mean, it's not a great exchange rate, but you can also leave that token there unrevealed a couple of turns in a row and just keep collecting with it. So when you do reveal a token, that token's going to go face up in front of your shield, and then you can't use that token again until you have shipped another token down. And I do want to point out that the shipping of these no-field tokens replaces a normal shipment, and you can't add any other forces to it normally. So that is something you have to work around. It is a constraint, but there are a lot of interesting and clever ways, I think, that you can work around that. The other thing that I like to use that 0 token for is to harass other players. So again, they don't know how many forces you have shipped into a territory, especially a stronghold that has a lot of opposing forces there. So if you go into Carthag where the Harkonnen have 10, or better yet, into Arakeen where the Treacheses have 10, they don't know how many forces you have there until the battle plan is revealed. And Atreides doesn't get to see your number dialed when there's a no-field token in that battle. The prescience is blocked. So it's not totally blocked. It's just the forces are blocked. So they have to dial accordingly. A lot of times, especially if it's not clear, like if your 3 token, for instance, was the one that was face up, they know it's a 5 or a 0, and that's all they know. And so a lot of times it's not worth the risk to assume that you're just coming in there with the 0. So they do have to dial the forces. And I can tell you, if I have a cheap hero as Richese, that's actually one of my favorite treachery cards to have, because now I can use that 0 token with Reckless Abandon, except against Harkonnen in advance, of course. You don't want to have them capturing your leaders, but it's fair game going after everybody else, because now you don't have anything to risk. You're not losing any forces. You're not losing a leader. You can get rid of worthless cards and not worry about anything else. Richese does have two strength leaders. Have a Hello Runt and Talos Balt. So those are your expendables. If you are just picking a fight, and like, all right, if they're going to get killed, the other guy's going to get 2 spice. 2's not that big of a deal. So use those tokens and really keep players on their toes in terms of which token are you using. Take advantage of that 0 token. It can be very effective. It's also great for just blocking strongholds. So if you've got the no-field token in a stronghold with another player, you've blocked it from other players trying to get into that stronghold. And you can use your 0 token very effectively when you're making a deal with somebody to block a stronghold. So you can say, look, you brought me 1 spice. It's the cost of my token to go down there, and then I've got 0 forces there, so I'm not losing anything, and it's easy to block that stronghold for the win, or to discourage other people from getting in there. So the other half of the equation for Richese is the Richese Treachery card. So again, they're at a disadvantage because they've got these great cards, but they have to sell them. So the key to really leveraging Richese, part of it is just reading the table, because you need to be able to optimize which card you're going to sell when. In some cases, you're looking at selling a card to get spice. You don't start with very much spice, but this is a way for you to get spice, because this card that you're selling, you get the payment that another player makes, not the Emperor. If you end up buying one of these cards, then you do pay the Emperor normally, or the Spice Bank if the Emperor is not in the game. So there are some all the cards are pretty decent, but there are some that are going to be especially useful at certain points in the game, and some that are pretty much always useful. And some will say overpowered, but again, it's in the eye of the beholder, in my opinion. So I'm going to quickly run through what each of these does, and then we'll talk about the order that you might want to sell them, what kind of auction you should use to do that, and other important things that really factor into making Richese a powerful faction. So the first one we have is a mirror weapon. It's a special weapon, and it copies the weapon that your opponent plays. If their treachery card counts as a weapon, and then it's discarded. So this I think is an underrated card. Again, it's not going to be universally useful, and when you sell these cards as Richese, you're selling them face up. So everybody knows what it is that they're buying, and more importantly, everybody knows who has them. But these cards can be especially effective in the right hands. So Bene Gesserit with Mirror Weapon can be very effective. Same thing with the Treachery. And then when you get to know what cards other people have in battles that they've used in a battle and won, and then you know, all right, I know that they've got a poison weapon, or I know that they have a poison defense, but a projectile weapon, and I have a projectile defense. This mirror weapon can be very effective for me. It's also really effective when you have the mirror weapon and another weapon, because everyone is expecting you to keep playing that mirror weapon, and then you play something else. So don't discount the mirror weapon. Again, it's a matter of figuring out the right time to get it out there and how to best leverage it. Next, we have the Ornithopter. So when you have this, as part of your movement, you may move one group of your forces up to 3 territories, or you can move 2 different groups of your forces up to their normal movement, and then you discard it. So it's a little bit like the Hajer, but actually has, I think, a little more flexibility. We have the Portable Snooper. So this counts as a snooper, but it does not have to go into your battle plan. You have it in your hand, and then you actually play it when you see that you needed it. You can't have played another defense. So you are setting yourself up, but you have to have the slot available for defense in order for you to slip that Portable Snooper in. But again, it's a nice, if you know that you need it, then you play it then, and you discard it. We have Residual Poison. So this is a special card that you play right before a battle, and it forces that player to lose one of their leaders at random to the tanks. They're killed, no spices collected for it. We have the Distrans. This is a special card that lets you give another player a treachery card from your hand. So there's really 2 basic ways that this is employed. One is if you've got a worthless card, you play the Distrans to give that worthless card to somebody to clog up their hand, or you can give somebody a useful card that they're going to need, whether it's an ally or not. But getting a card to your ally, also very useful, especially if you've got Atreides in the game, or even the Ixians, where they have a certain amount of card knowledge. And let's say that you've got the mirror weapon and you play Distrans. Did you give that mirror weapon to somebody else, or did you keep it? Did you give them something? Keeps everybody on their toes. So it's a nice way to mess around with that. We have the Juice of Sappho. This is a card that you can use one of a couple of different ways. You can become the aggressor in a battle. That means that you will choose the order of the battles. You will also win ties. You can choose to go first in any phase or action that requires the order, or go last, and this effect will supersede guild. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use Juice of Sappho. We have Samuda Drug, and the Samuda Drug card lets you take a treachery card immediately after another player discards it and add it to your hand. And if multiple are discarded, you get to choose which one of them is the one you want to take. So this is going to factor in here in just a minute. We have another Karama, and everybody knows how useful those can be. A lot of different uses for Karama, especially in Advanced. Then we have 2, which are arguably the 2 most powerful cards in the Richese stack. One is Stoneburner. So Stoneburner is a special attack card, special weapon card. You choose after battle plans are revealed. Either both leaders are killed, or both leaders in the battle do not count their strength if they otherwise survived. In either case, the player with the higher number of undialed force tokens wins the battle. The number of tokens, not the strength of the tokens, but how many tokens did you have left over? Dialed forces are lost normally, and then you discard it. So the Stone Burner, you go in against a much more powerful force. If they're dialing high, they are not going to win that battle if you have employed the Stone Burner. So again, it's a very powerful surprise effect that you can use either with a large force or possibly with a small force. And it's especially effective if you have another weapon in your hand too, because everybody's going to know you have the Stone Burner, but they don't know when you're going to use it necessarily, barring things like Bene Gesserit and Atreides and stuff like that. But you can really use that to win effectively. And then finally, we have the Null Entropy Box. And this is also very powerful. And anytime you pay 2 spice to the bank, you take the discard pile for the Treachery deck, secretly search it for any card other than this one, add it to your hand, you shuffle the discard pile, and then you put this on top. So nobody knows for sure which card that you took. So let's talk about how Richese can capitalize on the fact that they have these cards. They are deciding the order in which they're going to be sold and the manner in which they're going to be sold. So let's talk about the 2 different auction types. You have the once around and you have the silent auction. So the once around is one that I like to employ as Richese if I really need to get a lot of spice for a card. And the order in which you sell these cards is going to be critical to the strength of Richese as well. So I tend to sell cards as the first card if I'm interested in making spice off of that card, because at the very beginning of the auction, that's when the players all have the most spice and the most room in their hands for Treachery cards. So you want to sell something that you know that you can get a decent amount of spice for in those first couple of turns. And I should say, Richese is definitely not a faction that is strong early. They're much stronger in the mid to late game. So you've got to hold on, use your no-field tokens to stronghold block, give yourself time to pick up some spice, especially with those spice blows. You got to go after some spice blows, especially with your 5 token, to try to get some extra spice, because you're going to need it to be able to buy some of these cards yourself. So getting some spice. So in the early game, I'm looking at selling some cards that I think I can get some good spice for, that I'm not going to be sad that someone else has them. So Residual Poison might be a good one, because people are nervous about other people having that card, so they tend to spend a little bit more to get it just to keep it away from other people. It's one that certainly can be used against you, but I think it's worth rolling the dice on that. It might not be the first card that I sell. Portable Snooper, it's super handy, especially early in the game when nobody has any idea who's got the poison weapons. Having that and knowing it's in your hand, you're not going to lose it until you actually need it. So it's pretty useful card. Again, it's one that's not necessarily going to be used against you very often or effectively. The Juice of Sappho can be enticing as well. It's another one where you early in the game, you don't necessarily know when you're going to be able to take advantage of it, but it's a nice thing to have. But I might wait until like turn 2 or 3 for that one. The Ornithopter is also another one that's pretty good. So being able to move 2 groups of your forces, or to know that you've got a 3 territory move, is pretty good. The ones that I'm going to hold off on are going to be the Null Entropy Box, the Stone Burner, the Karama. These 2, again, it's situational. You gotta figure out when is the best time to do that, and it's usually a couple of turns into the game that you want to get out there. People are more likely to enjoy having the mirror weapon if they have another weapon in their hand, so that they can do the mind game of, will I play it or won't I? And the Distrans, again, it's most useful when alliances have happened, because factions that are in an alliance are going to want to use it. But it might also be one that you want to take advantage of and let your ally buy. So if I'm selling some of these cards, I like to use the once around, because you can choose which direction to do that once around in. I always like to have a wealthier faction be at the end of the once around, especially if there's one sitting next to me. So if I've got the Emperor on my right, I'm going to do the once around going to the left first so that the Emperor has the last bid. He's going to have the most spice, and he knows that if he doesn't buy it, then Richese might be able to buy it. And of course, if nobody bids on it, then you just discard it. So you gotta read the table. Like I said, you got to get a sense of what you think you're going to be able to sell. You can also employ the silent auction, especially early in the game when people have spice and they don't really know the value of a card at any given moment. So the silent auction is a great tactic to use to get somebody to overpay for a card, especially one of these little more innocuous cards like the Ornithopter or the Portable Snooper or even Residual Poison. You say, let's do a silent auction, and everybody reveals, and there's a lot of bids for 2, 3, 4 spice, and then somebody bids 7 or 8 spice, and then they're like, oh, why did I bid so much spice? And you're like, I don't care, but thank you for that. So it can be very effective. The other thing about the silent auction is you want to pay very careful attention to storm order, because again, the silent auction, if there's a tie, it's going to be broken in storm order. So the first player in storm order with the high bid is going to be the one to get it. So you want to look at when are you, as the Richese faction, going to be the first one in storm order, or who is a faction that you don't want to get a card or don't mind getting a card, and looking and seeing that. So I always check what's the storm order before I decide what I'm going to sell and the type of auction to use, because that can be an important factor. And if you're the one that wants to get the card, you want to capitalize on that and not have the storm order work against you. So let's talk about when it is that when you finally do have spice, and you want to buy some of these cards. It's something you got to watch and pay attention and get a sense for who can afford it, whose hands are full, and that's an important factor as well. So when I am a Richese and I want to be able to buy one of the cards, I sell last. And that is because at the end of the bidding round, the other hands are more likely to be full, and a lot of the spice is likely to have been spent. So people can't necessarily afford a card, and it's going to be easier for you to outbid those players that way. And I typically will use the once around, and this time I will start with the richer factions. They're always going to be a little bit afraid of overpaying for something, even where it's the once around. But because they're the first bid, they're not always willing to say, all right, yeah, here's 8 spice, or I'll bid 9 so that I can basically guarantee that I get it. And then at least you're getting a lot of spice for that card if you don't ultimately end up getting to buy it. I will sometimes wait to sell Null Entropy and or the Stone Burner until I am in an alliance. And then working with my ally, we have a much better sense for when we should sell that, who can afford it, and how we want to work on that. Because even as Richese, my ally can help me pay for the card. So it's a good way to get that card into Richese's hand. And the interesting thing, let's talk about alliances, because getting into an alliance with Richese can actually be very useful and profitable, because they have 2 things that they can do as an ally. So one is that they can offer to ship an ally's forces from off-planet using a no-field token. So they can say, look, we can use a no-field token. Again, it's the cost of shipping 1 force. When they do that, the no-field token is immediately revealed and then goes in front of the Richese shield. And so that can seem like a disadvantage, especially if you're like, well, I can only ship 3 forces because I already used a 5, or I'm trying to save the 5 for myself. But I want to talk about some ways that you can really capitalize on that part of the alliance, and then we'll talk about the other thing you can do with the Richese as an ally. So because you can use the no-field token for your ally's shipment, that means that you can get 2 no-field tokens out on the same turn. And then the last one that is used is going to be the one that's face up in front of the shield. So I like to use this opportunity to have my ally help me manage to get my 5 token so that it's behind the shield. That way I've always got it ready to go the next time I need to ship. So if my 5 is out in front, I try to get my ally to ship, even with the 0. So if they have enough forces on the planet and they don't need to ship, I was like, look, let's spend 1 spice and ship that token down and reveal it. And then what happens is the 0 goes in front of the shield. And now I've got the 3 and the 5 behind my shield. So the next time I ship, nobody knows which one it is, but they know it won't be a 0. So some forces are coming down. The other thing is, again, even if you don't want it, even if it's not about trying to optimize which tokens the Richese has behind the screen, it is a useful way to get more forces onto the board. So as Richese's ally, I'm like, yeah, that's fine, even if it's 3 and it replaces my normal shipment. It's 3 that I can get down cheaply and then maybe get them into the polar sink or somewhere to just start stockpiling them. So capitalize on that as much as you can. The other thing that you can do with the ally is that if you're Richese and you have an ally, you can give your ally a Richese Treachery card that is in your hand if their hand is not full. So you definitely want to, once you're in an ally as Richese, you want to start buying those cards and get your ally to help you, because at any point you can give them one of those cards. And if you have multiple of them, then they don't really know. The rest of the players have no idea what you're doing. And that's a great way to suddenly have everyone guessing who's got the stone burner. So if you've bought the stone burner and then at some point you give your ally one of your cards, maybe it was a stone burner or not, but that really only works if you've managed to buy more than one of your cards. So keep that in mind. And even buying something that is not particularly useful, so like, all right, maybe I'll get the Distrans, because then I can actually just play that and give somebody a card. And it can be my ally. And then I later on can give them another card, and just through my normal ally ability. So that can be a pretty big deal as well. So I mentioned the null entropy box. Let's say that you've played the stone burner, and now you've also got the null entropy box, or your ally has it. You pay 2 spice, and now you've got the stone burner again. And then let's say that your ally plays the stone burner, and you've got the Samuda drug. Well, once they've played it, you can play Samuda drug and then take it and put it in your hand again. So imagine stone burner used 3 times in the game. Very powerful effect, and could be game-changing. So that I believe is the real key to leveraging Richese and making them a viable faction. You got to smartly use those no-field tokens, use them to try to get spice, get forces onto the planet, stronghold block, harass other players, and then you've got to really capitalize on your 2 ways to do either auctions and try to make spice or position yourself to get it. The other ability that they have is called Black Market. It's an advanced game ability, and the way it works is at the start of the bidding round, before declaration, before any of the other effects that happen, you can intervene and offer a Treachery card, any card that's in your hand, up for auction. You announce what you're selling. You don't show anybody what it is, although the Atreides can peek, and you can lie about what it is. So that's going to be a metagame issue for you. Are you going to be somebody who says, yeah, this is a shield, and you're really selling them a trip to Gamont? It's risky, and maybe you can get a couple of spice for that. I find it's more useful to get something that you don't necessarily, like I've got 2 shields, I'm going to sell one. And I'll just say, look, yeah, I've got an extra shield. I'm selling it. Sometimes I'll say I have an extra shield and sell it when I actually don't, just to keep people guessing. They're like, oh, he's got that extra shield, and really I don't, but I know I can get a fair amount of spice for it, so that can be useful as well. It's great for selling your pocket card. Pocket card is the one that you start the game with, which nobody knows exactly which one it is. Ixians might be able to figure it out because they'll have seen the cards that everyone could potentially be getting, but Atreides doesn't know what your pocket card is. So I like to sell that as the Richese as a black market card, and then see what kind of spice I can get for it. So that is basically it. I hope I didn't forget anything. But yeah, I enjoy the Richese faction because they're very, very different than the other factions. That's what we as the designers enjoy most, is trying to introduce new things that the factions do. So, nobody is considering Richese a combat faction. They're not, but they've got some tricks up their sleeve. It's hard to consider them as an economic faction, although they do have potential income. They are going to get some spice every turn selling those cards, but how much fluctuates quite a bit. But I think if you're reading the table, you're paying attention to what people are doing, who's got spice, who's a threat, who's not. Sometimes it is better to spend spice to get something that you know what you're going to get, so you can capitalize on that as well. So there you have it. That is the Richese faction. Thanks for watching, and we'll do more of these on the other factions in the future.